Celtics second-round series against the Sixers with a hamstring injury. Jaylen Brown insisted he would be back for Game 2. Brad Stevens says pump the brakes. Brown's status for tonight is doubtful.
The bottom line is with this hamstring injury, it's not terrible. It's not a long-term thing. It shouldn't linger if he comes back at the right time. But you can make it worse if you don't come back at the right time, if you have to guard J.J. Redick and Marco Bellinelli. And he's going to have to do that. So this is a great test to know when you're going to be back or not. Because it's not just about running. It's about running at full speed all the way around the court.
Here's what our BPI's got on this series. The Celtics coming into Game 2 with a 65% chance to win the series. They win tonight, that bumps up to 77%. The Sixers win tonight, that drops Boston's chances to win the series down to 43%. For what it's worth, Vegas still has Philly as the series favorite. More First Take coming your way right now.
Listen, they botched Isaiah Thomas's injury. I think it's important that they're having patience here. So the undermanned Celtics have a one-game lead over the Sixers. Jaylen Brown doubtful to return for Game 2 with that hamstring. Who wins this series, Damian?
Max, listen, coming into the series, I thought the Sixers were going to win this series. For Embiid and Simmons, they've been just wonderful throughout their whole
You're selling them out after one game.
17-game winning streak and all the hard-fought series against the Heat. But, man, I got to tell you, man, I got to roll with the Boston Celtics, and here's why. Brad Stevens, who is just one of the best coaches in the NBA, his ability to identify the things you do well and shut them down has just been magnificent. And the one thing that he's done to the Sixers, he's basically shut off the lane of Ben Simmons. Because one thing that Ben Simmons can't do is shoot the rock. He cannot shoot the ball. So if you don't allow Ben Simmons to get in the lane where a lot of their offense is created, everything gets stagnated for the 76ers. Yes, we know Embiid is going to get here. There's no question about it. He's too talented of a player. But the fact that the Boston Celtics are so long with Jason Tatum, and then they got, Terry Rozier, all those guys, Al Horford, guys who can not only play multiple positions, but can switch everything. I mean, that's a huge advantage for a Boston team, and the fact that they've been able to shut Ben Simmons out from getting into the paint, I think that's going to be huge for the Boston Celtics moving forward. That's going to be something that the 76ers are going to have to address, because if they can't solve that riddle, that issue, Boston Celtics is going to advance in the playoffs.
The Sixers are going to win the series. They have the two best players in the series, and they have role players who play their role very well and shoot the three normally very well. Now, they haven't shot the three very well in these playoffs, actually. Not just in this game one, the previous game one, but in the previous series. They're shooting under 25% from three in 4 of the 6 playoff games they've played. That's not normal for them. They were a top 10 three-point shooting team during the regular season. So is that all because they're taking away Ben Simmons' driving lanes? No. Is Brad Stevens a great coach? Look, probably the best in the NBA. I mean, obviously Popovich with a resume, and Popovich is the guy until someone, I guess, supplants him, or displaces him. But Brad Stevens is the guy you want of all the young coaches, certainly, and maybe he's just the best coach overall. He's a great, great coach, and it's the reason the Celtics beat the Bucks. Best coach beat the best player. It was really Brad Stevens versus Antetokounmpo. But Stevens' success can be seen like in Jaylen Brown's absence, not to mention Kyrie Irving and Gordon Hayward, for that matter's absence, because he gets other guys. You mentioned it, Damian. They're interchangeable, right? So he gets other guys to step up and fill that role. And so what that also means is Jaylen Brown's coming back doesn't give you an enormous premium over what you had, because they have a lot of very competent players performing well and being put in positions where they can perform well. That'll include Jaylen Brown, but he might give you a marginal advantage over what you had. So you have to rely on not only continuing to do the job on Simmons, not only Embiid, who had admitted that the defense was no good, and it started with him, which is what you want to hear from your franchise player, right? One of your two guys, you're big, say, hey, on me. We didn't show up, maybe rusty. That's not an excuse. It's the playoffs. We got to play defense. I expect Embiid to play much better defense. That should have a trickle-down effect on the team. I do not expect the team to be icy cold from the outside. And whatever you want to do to Ben Simmons, he has a sky-high basketball IQ. He's not just a physical freak. He's a super smart rookie and really been in the league for 2 years now. So I don't think no matter what Brad Stevens does, the Celtics are going to win this series because the two best players on the floor are for the Sixers and for the other reasons I just mentioned. And finally, Damian, it's not a coaching mismatch. This is not against the Bucks. This is, Brett Brown is a good coach. So Brad Stevens may be the guy you want, but the Sixers are also well coached. They win the series.
Yeah, listen, we also know that not all the time the best players win the series. We've seen that time and time again. But the one thing I will say is this. For the 76ers, if you're going to beat the Boston Celtics, you're going to have to basically do what the Jazz did against the Houston Rockets. They're going to have to shut down the perimeter, in particular the three-point line, because that's where Boston has been feasting on a lot of people is from the three-point line. When you talked about the versatility, I mean, you got Al Horford, Jason Tatum, Terry Rozier, Jaylen Brown. All these guys can shoot the three. And when you have that many sharpshooters on your team, it just creates all type of mismatches for the opponent. So listen, do the 76ers have probably the two best players in this series? Absolutely. But the real problem is going to be on the defense end. It's almost like pick your poison. Who are you going to try to shut down for the Boston Celtics, in particular on the perimeter? If they can't solve that riddle, they're not going to beat the Boston Celtics.
The Boston Celtics are the future, and the future's next year if they're healthy. And it's going to be the Sixers and the Celtics for the foreseeable future in the East. But right now, it is Boston who is missing their certainly their best player in Kyrie, and arguably their two best players in Kyrie and Gordon Hayward. And they ain't coming back against the Sixers. And the Sixers are fully loaded. Go with the fully loaded team. These two are going to be slugging it out for the next 3, 4, 5 years, barring catastrophic injury. Go with the team that's fully loaded right now, and that is Philadelphia. By the way, you talk about sharpshooters. The Sixers shoot the three ball extremely well. Even they're big, even Embiid. One of the reasons Embiid is a unique player in the history of the position is because he does so many things so well for a center, unlike maybe any center before him. Not only in the post and defending the post and can defend out in space and all those things, he can also shoot the three. Really, the only guy who can't is your megastar point guard who does everything else. Sixers.
This one at 8:30 tonight. I can't wait to react to all of it tomorrow, gentlemen, but let's keep it moving here. So many question marks for the Thunder this offseason, but one thing we do know is that Billy Donovan will be leading the team. Yesterday, GM Sam Presti said Donovan will be returning for his fourth season as head coach. He also said the dialogue with Paul George has been encouraging. The team hasn't had much success since Kevin Durant left, getting bounced out of the playoffs in the first round for 2 straight seasons. Max, who do you blame for the Thunder's failures?
Billy Donovan, coach. Whether or not you have a perfect assembling of talent, assemblage of talent, the bottom line is, okay, coach, here's Russell Westbrook and Paul George. And by the way, forget about Carmelo Anthony for a second. Steven Adams and Carmelo. And they made some midseason moves for guys who could shoot and defend. Coach, you had enough. You had enough to do more than you did. You had enough to get out of the first round. I know you had a tough draw, but that's the playoffs, man. That's what happens. No one's trying to hear, well, the other team was good too. Be better than the other team. And the Thunder seem to not have a plan, really. Zach Lowe has a great article on ESPN.com posted a couple days ago. Like, how do you win with Russell Westbrook? And whether or not he's right about it, it seemed like a plausible scenario to me. There are plenty of ideas of how to work the personnel you had on that team. And Billy Donovan did not come up with one of them, period. Now, he may be an improvement on Scott Brooks in the playoffs. Scott Brooks seems to develop players very well, but I don't think has been a very good playoff coach. But just because he may be an improvement on Scotty Brooks in the playoffs doesn't mean he's good enough. And the fact that they don't share the ball, it's the unwillingness of the players. Russell Westbrook doesn't share. That's part of a head coach's job. Part of the head coach's job is not to just throw up their hands and walk away. What can I do? They're not sharing the ball. It's to figure it out, damn it. Phil Jackson, everyone talks about how he's like, the 11 rings and all this. So sure, if you have Jordan and Kobe and these guys, you can win all these championships. But it's not about X's and O's. Phil Jackson, with guys like Jordan and Kobe, some of the greatest players of all time, but guys who really liked that ball, who had to learn how to share it. He didn't just, forget it, what can I do? He figured out a way into their heads to get them to buy in and play the way he needed them to play. And that's on Billy Donovan, too. That's the job of the head coach. He has failed to do it.
Max, you're wrong. You're wrong. I'm going to put it on GM Sam Presti. Here's why. You know, yes, the head coach has to have a system put in place to, to ultimately put his players in position to go out there and be successful. But part of it is bringing in the right players that's going to fit a certain type of system. When you look at what the Oklahoma City Thunder did, you bring in a Carmelo Anthony, who everyone knows has always been known for iso ball. He can't play defense. You bring in Paul George, who's a younger, similar type of player. And then you're going to try to have them fit in with Russell Westbrook, who I've always said, I love his energy, but I'm not necessarily sure he makes other guys around him better. We all know in the NBA, in order to win a championship, you got to have the ball flow. We see that with the Golden State Warriors. Yes, they have a bunch of superstars, but the one thing that you see from the Warriors, they are an unselfish bunch. You constantly see the ball moving side to side all around the court. You're never going to win a championship in the NBA when you got three guys who basically play iso ball every time they come down the court. Now, does Billy Donovan, have some fault into this? Absolutely, he does. But ultimately, you got to bring in the right personnel to accentuate the other guys on the roster. We all know what Russell Westbrook is, and then you're going to bring in other guys who are basically Russell Westbrook clones as far as being iso players. That wasn't a smart move by, those moves weren't smart moves by Sam Presti.
Look, you can say that about Westbrook, and you can say it about Carmelo, but you can't say that about Paul George, I don't think. When you take the non-LeBron, call them threes. I know it's a lot of interchangeable positionless basketball nowadays, but call them small forwards. They're really wing players, and they're not like pounding on the inside. They're not, like grabbing every offensive board, and they're also not handling the ball more than the primary ball handler because, LeBron can do all those things. The wing players that are different from the others, Kawhi Leonard, then Paul George. Then I think you could say, well, you want to start with KD or Kawhi, then Paul George, and then, say, Gordon Hayward if he's healthy, someone like that. What makes them excellent is that what makes them really great complementary pieces, they don't just have to be the centerpiece of the team, is that they don't need the ball to be effective on offense. They all play defense to one extent or another, and they don't need the ball. You don't need to design plays for them. They can get their points out in transition or in the flow of the game. In fact, Paul George is an excellent counterpart, an excellent sidekick for Russell Westbrook. And if Carmelo Anthony isn't, don't make him the focal point of the offense, which they didn't. Even just Westbrook, Paul George, Steven Adams, that's a nucleus that should be doing better than the Thunder did.
Max, you know who I blame? KD. They haven't truly been able to replace that guy. All right, we'll leave it there, guys. Eric Reed follows in Colin Kaepernick's footsteps filing a collusion grievance against the NFL. Damian will tell you why those two are a different deal after the break. And Carson Wentz targeting week 1 for his big return, but how much does his backup winning the title have to do with it?
Yeah, I'm just trying to make my mama proud.
You know the golden rule. Those who have the gold make the rules.
Hey,